All right, let's talk about Christmas. We all know the story, right? Twinkling lights, presents, all that good stuff. But what if I told you there's a whole other side to it? A much, much darker side that's been lurking just out of sight. Well, today, we're gonna drag it right into the spotlight. So when I say Santa Claus, what pops into your head? A big, jolly guy, red suit, sack full of toys for all the good kids, right? It's this picture of pure, simple kindness. But here's the thing, that's not even close to the whole story. Because you have to ask yourself, what happens to the naughty kids? I mean, for hundreds of years, the punishment for misbehaving was a whole lot worse than just getting a lump of coal in your stocking. See, the original gift giver, he didn't travel alone. He had, let's call them, associates. And their job was to deal with the naughty list in a way that was, well, pretty terrifying. Yeah, the setup was actually pretty simple. You had Santa, or his earlier versions, handling all the rewards for the good kids. But then you had his counterparts, and their one and only job was to dish out the punishment. And we're not talking about some grumpy elves here. Oh no. We're talking about figures that came straight out of our oldest fears, created for one purpose, to make absolutely sure children behaved. Okay, so let's meet the most famous one. This is Krampus. Just look at him. Straight out of the folklore from places like Germany and Austria, this guy is literally a half-goat, half-demon nightmare. He's not carrying a sack of toys, he's dragging around rusty chains and has a big basket on his back. And that basket, it's for throwing naughty kids into and dragging them away. He is the polar opposite of everything St. Nicholas stands for. And then you got this character, Belsnickel. He's a little different. German immigrants brought his story over to America. He's this guy covered in fur, wearing a mask, looking like he just walked out of the forest. He carries a switch to give bad kids a little smack, but he also tosses candy on the floor for the good ones, to see if they're greedy. So maybe not as demonic as Krampus, but trust me, just as scary when he shows up at your door. So this raises a huge question, right? How in the world did we go from this team-up of a kind saint and his terrifying monster sidekicks, to the jolly, friendly Santa Claus that we all know and love today? Well, the story behind that is an incredible mix of real history, famous poems, and, yeah, even corporate marketing. This is so fascinating. You can literally trace the evolution. It all starts way back in the 4th century with the actual St. Nicholas, a bishop who was famous for being super generous. Fast forward a bit, Dutch settlers bring their Sinterklaas stories to America. But the real game changer? That happens in 1823 with the poem we all know as "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." Suddenly, we have a sleigh and reindeer. Then a cartoonist, Thomas Nast, gives him the whole North Pole workshop and that plump, jolly look. And the final touch? You can thank Coca-Cola for this one. Their ads in the 1930s locked in that bright red suit, and boom, the Santa we know today was born. And if you put them side by side, the change is just wow. You go from a real historical bishop helping the poor in Turkey to a Dutch folklore figure who rewards kids, to the Santa Claus we have now who really became a global symbol thanks to 20th century advertising. His whole purpose shifted. He was completely separated from his religious history and, maybe more importantly, from those scary helpers of his. Okay, but this brings us to the really deep question, doesn't it? Why? Why did we ever need these monsters in the first place? I mean, Christmas is supposed to be the happiest time of the year. So why would we invent these terrifying creatures to be a part of it? The answer, it turns out, says a whole lot about us. The thing is, these legends had a job to do. They weren't just ghost stories to tell around the fire. They were a way to enforce good behavior. Think about it. Krampus was basically a walking, snarling incentive for kids to listen to their parents. It creates this perfect balance, right? You have the reward and you have the punishment. It's a way of recognizing that life isn't all sunshine and rainbows. There's always light and shadow, joy and, well, fear. And here's the kicker. You might think, okay, that's all ancient history, we don't do that anymore. But you'd be wrong. We haven't outgrown this at all. Even though Krampus isn't knocking on most of our doors, that need to tell cautionary tales around Christmas time, oh yeah, it is definitely still around. For example, have you ever heard the urban legend about the stuck Santa? The story goes that a burglar dresses up like Santa to rob a house, but he gets stuck in the chimney and, well, it doesn't end well for him. This is our modern Krampus. It's the exact same idea, using a Christmas figure to tell a story with a very clear message. Don't do bad things or something bad will happen to you. So you might be thinking that all this talk about demons and switches kind of ruins the whole Christmas vibe. But I want you to consider something else. What if the opposite is true? What if having these dark characters actually makes the Christmas story better, more complete, more human? This really gets to the heart of the matter. You can't really appreciate the light if you don't know what the dark looks like, right? Santa's kindness, his generosity, it means so much more when you put it up against the threat of Krampus. Getting a gift feels that much more special when you know what the alternative could have been. The scary stories don't take away from the good ones. They're the reason the good ones feel so good in the first place. So think about it the next time the holidays roll around. What's the story we're really telling our kids and ourselves? Is it just a simple fairy tale about getting presents? Or is it something bigger, something deeper? A story that acknowledges that real joy, real goodness, it's not about ignoring the darkness, it's about knowing it's there and choosing the light anyway.